It's a vast overgeneralization to talk about the path being the way I'm about to talk about it. But it can make a kind of sense. And that is that based upon temperament and character, there can be a tendency or a leaning towards one of two ways of moving spiritually. One is the path of exploration and wisdom. The other is the path of affection, love, in the heart. And these should never be thought of as two distinct paths that never touch. More like figure eights that constantly come back and touch each other in an extended period of time over and over again. And it's even wrong to think about them as being separate paths, but there is a slight tendency for one to be preferred in terms of a description as opposed to the other. So let me just talk a little bit about, if I could, about these two different paths, and you can get a sense of how last night's analogy of the base camp and the mountaintop wasn't an analogy of hierarchy, where it's better to climb the mountain, or, God, I'm only a base camp kind of person. It wasn't that at all. That's where the analogy breaks down. But rather, it's the tendency or propensity of one of us, of us to be drawn towards one of these two paths. So the path of the heart is a path in which the motivation is interconnectedness. The motivation, what draws us into the path is love. And love starts as a dynamic with oneself, self-love, but also in the dynamic of relationship, until one sees that there is a limitation to thinking about the path or thinking about life or living life always loving something. Something being myself, something being someone else, something being that in some way the sense of I love you, I love myself, is itself its own inhibitor to love. And at that point there is a moving back inside of oneself and the release of the obstructions that limit love. So love in its entirety is the direction of that path. It so happens that love in its entirety can also be seen as wonder and mystery, or awareness. These are all synonymous words. And the path of wisdom seeks wonder and mystery. Wonder and mystery is the driving force, the allurement of the path of wisdom. It's the tool that's most frequently used or entertained in the path of wisdom is investigation. It's looking and exploring and just loving the mystery, the wonder of it. Not so much finding and discovering the answers, that comes in its natural way, but rather the sense of wonderment, the sense of exploring and feeling wonder, feeling the awe of life, the awe and mystery of life. And one accesses that all through investigation, through looking, exploring, asking questions, not intellectual questions or conceptual questions, which don't lead to mystery at all. They just lead to further knowledge. So you might say that the path of wisdom is to overcome the knowledge we already know and to enter the space of innocence of all, the innocence of all. And so that happens to be my tendency, my temperament. Now, those two, of course, overlap, as I mentioned many times, and the path of all also has to arrive at the contentment of love. The contentment of love. That's why I used the analogy of the base camp last night. The base camp is that solidity of contentment. And the path of love uses as its main strategy, as its main movement, surrender. Surrender being the willingness not to resist anything. When we don't resist anything, then that sense of inclusivity gets greater and greater, and the contentment becomes stronger and more absolute, until finally it is absolute, until there's nothing left, because we have simply surrendered out our separation. There's nothing that's keeping me distant from anything.